begin with is a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Actually, when you get settled, Eileen's gonna be about 15 minutes late.
Okay,
So that was Bruce Pitkin.
I got it.
Did you second it? Who did that first? So it was a tie. Oh, no. All right. Any comments or questions about the agenda? All in favor, say aye. Aye. And then our second item is the approval of the February 6th minutes. I have a motion to approve the minutes.
I agree, I'm making a motion to.
I'm not awake yet.
Is there a second? Okay, Jenna seconds. Is there any discussion or corrections to the minutes? They were posted in the Dropbox. Okay, all in favor say aye. Okay, and our next item is an update on the seed fund request that we submitted, Dr. Shaw.
Okay, well, we presented two seed fund requests a few weeks ago, right at the end of February, to the committee that was basically assembled from the Fulton County Schools Foundation. We presented two. One of them was, which you guys are already aware of, was the recovery program. The other one was for the International Baccalaureate Learning Opportunity. The recovery option was approved and the IB trip was not. So we received about 10 grand to do the recovery program, and in a nutshell, that's really it. We didn't get, and I don't know if Crystal can help, we didn't get any feedback as to why was things approved and why were they not, but we were just simply told this is what you got, so that's really all we know.
And are there going to be opportunities to go for more, or is it a one-shot?
There is, no, the seed fund, and Crystal will correct me, the seed fund money I'm told will be there every year. The issue is, as more schools roll into their cohorts, it's gonna be more schools pulling from the same pot. Am I pretty much correct?
That's exactly right. And I don't have much to offer in terms of explanation either. The seed fund is managed by Patty Fogelson at the district. So it seems like an extension of RFF, and it is, but we don't manage it as a team. So we presented the materials, but we were not allowed to be in the room even when they were discussing. You could imagine, we would have been, the entire team would have been arguing or advocating for their school. So we were asked to leave after the last presentation. But I think all of our central schools did a great job.
Okay, well, I think the grants that were awarded are posted on the website, is that correct?
They
Yes.
are.
So it might be illustrative if people wanted to look and see what was funded to get an idea for next year. So. All right, and the next item then is the recommended bell schedule modifications for next year. Dr. Shaw, can you just give us an update on where we are right now?
Sure, a little bit closer. Last time we met, I told you there was two hurdles that we still had left to overcome. One of them was a professional development plan. The other one was the funding for the additional staff if we do the AB block, and it's still an if because it hasn't been approved yet. Our professional development plan was approved yesterday. The district is fine with what we're doing as we work to prepare our staff to change how they're doing things in the classroom, transitioning from 49-minute period to 90-minute. Right now, it is all about funding. Our budgets for the next year were released to us yesterday. The information wasn't right, so we got an email saying that today it is right. So hopefully we can go in there and see what our funding looks like and what's available, and then if we have to go back and ask the district for some additional support. So that's really, in a nutshell, that's it.
I thought there was a commitment that if we went with the block schedule that there would be additional.
Oh, no. Who? From who?
I thought that was what the holdup was that it was gonna take extra money to do it.
Well, that's right. What the holdup is, it will definitely take extra money to do it, but the holdup is they want us to look at our local school budget first and then let us know where we can find and then go back to the district and say, here's what we need. So I haven't heard anything from the district that said, we will give you the additional staff. That hasn't happened yet. Did I understand your question right?
So I would hope we would make a commitment to do it if we don't know that we have the money to do it.
That's why we haven't announced it. Because if they say it's not there and we can't give you the staff, then we basically just keep our current schedule.
And how much money is extra money do we need to find?
Well, we need at a minimum 4 to 5 staff members at a cost of about $75,000 a teacher. So you can do the math on that.
And I thought, totally wrong, is that Karen hired some expert Bell person that came in and evaluated, and that's where the initiative came. Because we had talked about block schedule before, and always knew that it cost too much money.
No, we didn't recommend it in the first
We
place.
didn't
Yeah,
recommend
no,
it
that-
just 'cause
well,
we knew we didn't have the money, so.
You're kind of right. We actually, and all this information is online. And I'll back up a little bit. So this summer, I spent a lot of time talking to people, students, parents, staff, and there was a lot of concerns brought about the Bell schedule.
Right.
So we started the process of looking at what we could do to change. And to be honest, we thought going into the process that there just wouldn't be the funding to do the AV block. So the committee that we put together looked at a 6-period day, which we quickly discounted because it would mean we'd lose a lot of opportunities. A trimester, which just became logistically unmanageable. An AB block where teachers got planning every other day. Well, that didn't go very far. And then the current schedule with some modifications. So when we were getting ready to really kind of make a decision, Karen said, make the argument, make the case why you need additional staff. So that's what we have been doing for the last 2 to 3 months. The gentleman that came in, his name was Dr. Michael Reddick, and he was actually made available to the district. And we went and sat, Mr. Blackwell and I went and sat with him for about 2 hours. And he was very knowledgeable. He had a lot of experience in schools. He understood the IB program. He understood the dynamics of what we're trying to accomplish. And he made several recommendations. He said, at a minimum, to make this work, like I said, that's where I got the number 4 to 5 teachers. He's also designed the schedule. I mean, once we get the staff, we're ready to roll. It's just a matter of getting the commitment that we can have those additional teachers. So the first step is to look through our local budget, see what we can find, and then go to the district and say, it's just not here, help.
But we already know that. So I have to say, I'm really frustrated because we've been through this exercise for several years. So
Yes,
why
ma'am.
are we wasting our time?
Because that's what I was told to do.
Well, I think we need to just not do that. I mean, we're
Okay.
responsible, I'm serious, I mean, we're responsible for the budget.
Right.
And I am not willing to put anybody through the effort of trying to find the money for a block schedule in the resources that we are regularly allocated because it's already been proven that it can't be done.
Mhm.
So.
I think the push
We
came
wouldn't
from
come off
parents and
much.
students, right, to at least look into it again, that's my.
I understand,
Right.
but the discussion that was going
Your
on.
point is, the money's not there.
Well, and I think you were pretty clear all along that the discussion with the district has been, we'd like to do a block schedule, can we have an additional teacher allocation? And they said, well, think about it.
Mhm.
So I think we just need to hold right there. And if they will give us the additional money, then we will budget for it. But we have, as you're about to learn, an extremely short budget window. And I can't see wasting anyone's time, most importantly yours, going through this process to try to see if we can come up with 5 more teaching positions from a budget where we know the money isn't there. Why would we do that?
Can I ask
So
a
I'm-
question, Dr. Shaw?
Sure.
I guess I'm really disappointed.
Do you have something in mind as to how this can happen? Like, for instance, you can fund 2 from the budget, we need the county to budget 3. I mean, is there any, going into this process at this point in the game, do you have an idea of how you're gonna be able to get this done? Or you're hopeful?
Well, the only thing that really we could do at the local level is the PTSA cannot fund positions. Foundation's already committed to supporting professional development. So what we could do is hypothetically take $2 grand from, some instructional supplies account and then have the PTSA make up the difference. It's kind of moving shells around, but that is one option. But I've heard from the district that there could possibly be one, and again, I haven't gotten in and looked at it, that there could be one position in there that is new, but as far as getting us to the number we need to make it work, it's not there. I've been told, look in your local budget, see where you can scrimp and look in the sofa cushions, and then come back to us and ask for more.
And is that coming from Karen?
Yes.
Okay. So when Karen initially said, you need to talk to this expert, and that she also got the report about block schedule, did she give you any encouraging words?
Well, sure. Karen has actually had many, and I'm not privy to those obviously, because that's a little higher up the food chain, but she's talked to Scott Murray. She's had a conversation with Gail Dean, as have I, about what our needs are, and they've said, see what you get, look in your budget, and then let us know. But I do know also, to be fair, that one of the things they're looking at is the district picking up the funding for the IB program. they already pay for testing, we spend a considerable amount of money on, and I don't remember, I would tell you, on training, on registration fees, on other things. So the thought is the district picks that up, that frees up some more funds that we can put towards staff.
And does, when you kind of look at those numbers, does that come anywhere close to $400,000?
No, and I think what's even more alarming is that, I mean, it's gonna be April, and our staff are not gonna know what kind of a schedule they're teaching next year. And a block schedule is not a simple transition. And I have to say, I'm hearing from a lot of parents who initially were supportive of the block schedule, that the timing has become such a concern that I think there isn't some support for doing it next year, because people are concerned that the teachers aren't gonna be prepared and the schedules are not gonna be straight.
Well, schedules are actually, we've already started scheduling for it, and we've already started the professional development process for it. The issue is just really hiring the staff and announcing it. I mean, like I said, once we have it done, we're ready to go. I just don't have the approval that we're gonna give the staff we need to make it
I
work.
understand, but and hiring the staff is no simple matter
No,
either.
ma'am, that's a challenge.
Particularly staff that can teach in effectively in 90 minutes, which is not something that really is good. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out from the governance council standpoint, and we're gonna talk about the budget process shortly, next actually, is what we need to do about this, because I just, you know, we're being asked to waste our time, and I think it was clear when the expert made the recommendation that this required additional teachers. We've already demonstrated that the additional teaching positions are not in our budget. So somebody needs to be making a decision about whether there's a willingness to fund us to implement a block schedule or not. If there is not, then we need to go about our budget process with that in mind. If there is, then we can go about our budget process with that in mind. But to go about our budget process and try to figure this out is just wasting time that we don't have. So who do we as a council, if others agree with me, express that point of view to?
Well, I know Karen's one option. I've had a conversation with Gail Dean. She knows what we're trying to do, and ultimately funding decisions do come from the board and Dr. Mary and Dr. Losa. I mean, those are the people that ultimately are making decisions about what we get and how it's allocated, so.
So why don't we have a conversation about this, and, you know, am I the only one who's feeling like
No,
being
it's-
asked this?
Obviously, it's crunch time. I mean, we've already, with Mr. Blackwell, you know, narrowed that window down in terms of when the scheduling needs to be out, and I know there's a meeting tomorrow night with parents
Right.
regarding next year's schedule and classes and so forth, so you can't choose your classes until you know what
Well, you actually can.
you can. Okay, so we can go through that process.
We can. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's created some confusion because the kids are like, well, how come I'm signing up for 8? Well, sign up for 8 because in the end of the day, it's easier to take a class off and then just go back and add one. So, I mean, I'm pretty confident if we got the approval within the next week or two, we can make it work. We're kind of already down that road. Conversely, if it was told it's not gonna happen, we could stop and readjust. I'm not worried about the flexibility, but to Martha's point, the longer we wait, the more confusion's out there. Like, it's gonna be frustrating tomorrow night when we have that parent meeting because we don't have any answers.
So, will you remind me again, what are we waiting on? Are we waiting for approval of the funds?
Yes.
And that's from the district?
And if we've given them like a hard number and a hard proposal and
Absolutely.
all that, so I mean, it's an item that they vote on.
Well, I mean, I don't know the logistics of it at that
Yeah.
level, but, I mean, they know exactly what we need, and I've sent them information, and I've showed them everything we've got ready to go, and the research behind it, and our professional development plan, everything has been sent.
And this consultant, he didn't actually officially recommend the AB block.
Yeah, he
Did
did.
he?
I mean, he said for
Okay,
what
so
we're
he
trying to
recommended
do,
and what
yeah,
we're trying to do.
absolutely. For what we're trying to do, he absolutely said it was the best way to go. And then, you know, we also, and I think I'm repeating myself and I apologize, we took a trip to Marietta High School, which has an NYP program and an IB program, and they're a Title I school, and they have at-risk population. And the IB coordinator there said that the AB block was essential to what they're trying to do. So I'm not worried about supporting it, I'm not worried about the argument for it, I'm just worried about when we can get the approval that we're gonna get the funding that we need.
I think one concern is that you've had feedback from the district that's encouraged you to work with the consultant on a schedule that made a recommendation, and they gave you some indication that there would be support for it, which is
Correct.
why you continued to pursue it, or you
Correct.
would have stopped it a long time ago. So I think it is time, I agree with Martha, that it's time to get some commitment behind this, if they're gonna encourage us to go down that road. It is the best schedule for the school if it can be done, but
When, Mark, do you know, when would the next opportunity be for them to approve something like this? Can they do this in?
I think they'd have to do it as part of the budget approval for next
Right.
year, which is not until next month, but I think we would need to have an indication that they intended
That it's
to
in there,
include it.
yeah.
And, you know, in the scheme of a $1 billion budget,
Right.
you know, we're talking about dust. But I'd like to hear from the faculty members on what you all think in terms of continuing to try to find the money internally.
So Roger, in terms of registrations, Dr. Shaw said, we've already asked the kids to select 8 courses. We've talked about which one we dropped off, so Mr. Russell has the information to do the schedule. He still gets work on throughout the summer. In terms of professional development, you have several teachers that are taught on it, as well as teachers that are doing teaching. So the concern in the community is that we're not prepared to teach any block schedule. We've been crying out for more minutes, so we are very excited to be able to have more time for our students.
Well, what are your thoughts about,
I think we need to go, we can, let's assume we're gonna do the law school. And if he has to find, place with the numbers and the shopping, we've done the shopping before, I think he has foundation to, staff, or fund our supplies, which are, pretty expensive to purchase for positions. So that, is there a possibility less NYP training and more?
Well, and ironically, you know, with NYP, we're up for reauthorization next year. So, and I've sent these numbers up as well. It's actually gonna be more expensive next year because Ms. Hanson has said we need between $5,000 and $7,000 to do all the things that come with reauthorization. Which I'm not totally familiar with, she is, but she said it's gonna be a little more expensive next year for that.
We're first high useful.
right, so, okay.
Well,
Well, I want to just want to hear
Yeah.
Dr. Coppus and I'll come back.
Okay.
That was good.
So what I'm wondering is, I mean, and here's my point, is do we need to scramble to try to find this money, or do we need to stop and formally express from the governance council to the district that we need their financial support to do the block schedule?
Yeah, I think that needs to be communicated.
Because we can't communicate that unless we all agree that that's what we want to communicate.
I think
We
it's
need
pretty
a motion
strongly,
to
I
make-
think, I mean, I've heard from students, I've heard from parents, I'm hearing from teachers, that seems to be the route. The majority of the people want to go.
Yeah.
So,
We can talk about the
all year.
4 things.
Is that how you tell Tom?
And my concern about this showing
Rings on
with the
the tree.
foundation is that that may be sustainable or it may not.
Well-
And so to put something as significant as your schedule, which you really don't want to have flipping from year to year,
Right.
on soft money and the vote of people who are independent of the school, it just doesn't seem like a good way to do business in my mind. I mean, if we had to,
Honestly, I thought it was a done deal. I thought Karen had found the money, I thought, because we were in high school. So
No, we would have.
I had lunch with Julia Burnett on Friday, and we didn't talk about bell schedules at all. You know, I would have asked her. So, I mean, my recommendation is yes, we make a formal request. But I think, you know, it's time to start burning up the phones. I mean, have you talked to Gail lately? You heard anything from her?
no, and I mean, I think individually, we can certainly, I was kind of waiting for the system to work.
Right.
So,
How'd that work?
The chorus just keeps repeating.
I mean, she should be carrying.
It's like, have we seen this movie before?
I mean,
Groundhog Day.
enough of these people. I mean, shouldn't Gail be carrying the ball?
But we probably need to help her, because
Yeah.
if she continues to remind us, she's only one person,
Right.
not a 7. So would you put that in the form of a motion?
All right, I'd like to make a motion that the governance council make a strong recommendation to, we're directing it to the Fulton County School Board,
Then we just say to the school system.
to the school system, that Riverwood be granted sufficient funding so that it may implement its proposed, what's the official name of the plan?
Maybe block
Schedule.
Is there a second for that motion?
Can I change one word?
Sure.
From sufficient to necessary?
Necessary, okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second
All right, any more discussion?
Just, do we have the statistical information that if we talk to 25 other IB schools out there, would 24 of them be on an IB block?
Oh, I really don't know. I mean, you know, I know Campbell is, Cobb, and Marietta is, and that's the only two that I'm really aware of that are close by.
They're IB.
There are a number of IB schools throughout the country who do maybe block.
There you go.
Okay.
I would think
That would be
more
more-
doing it on that kind of schedule than any other kind of schedule.
And again, we're the only IB school in the district that should justify extra funding for the skills. And so that needs to be part of our letter. It needs to be a very strong letter.
Well, and that has been my argument all along, because one of the things that comes up naturally is equity of funding, you know. Why are you getting X when other schools in the district are not? I think, and this has been a delightful revelation for me all year long, is we do things that other schools don't do. We have programs other schools don't have. We offer opportunities that other kids come to from all over the district. So I don't have and I have been arguing that, you know, if we're gonna be tasked with these jobs, which we love doing, and these programs and these opportunities, help us so we can do it right and do it in a way that's best for our people.
So what I will take responsibility for, unless somebody else wants to do it, is to work with Dr. Shaw to draft a letter, and then I can send it to everybody. I will say, there's a board meeting on Thursday night, which I don't know whether that's here or there, but it would be great to be able to distribute it before then. So if we can do this by the end of today, if you can give us your feedback, maybe as early as noon on Wednesday, like we got it out at 5 o'clock today, just any feedback by noon on Wednesday, and then we could distribute it. Does that sound like a good approach?
Dr. Shaw, was there a list of, like a better term, bullet points developed?
Absolutely.
You know, yeah, I could have that.
We have it done.
Well, if you could, so we'll put it in the letter, and then you'll have it.
Okay.
And then I would say if we can kind of work our individual connections to the extent that we have them, so we can move this forward. And again, my concern is, as we are about to learn, we are on a very short timeline on this budget recommendation. And so if we spend 2 weeks trying to come up with 5 teaching positions and then decide we can't, then we have to wait for the district to say, oh, I mean, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to spin our wheels that way.
I thought we were past that point, like we've already, figured out that we don't have the funds locally. So we're already past that, right? Now we're waiting on the
Well,
district.
yeah, Portia, the budgets were released to the principals yesterday, and we got an email saying that the numbers weren't right, so look in again today. So what I've been told is sit down with Susan, look at last year's budget compared to what the numbers are now. I don't anticipate any surprises, but I have been told, go and look and see what's there. So, yes, ma'am, that's what I will do. And then my anticipation is we'll be exactly in the same point we are today, but I'll go look for sure.
And do you think
I don't expect there to be any Easter eggs, but.
Do we need to come up with just, like a better term, token, like, hey, we came up with 20 grand that we're saving versus
Yeah.
saying, I couldn't
Well,
find anything.
I think we need to demonstrate good faith by
Yeah.
looking at if there is anything that we can do without. I absolutely think we need to do that.
Okay.
But I just want to make the point that this exercise of trying to figure out how to fund the block schedule in the current budget allocation is why we don't have a block schedule, because it's
Right.
not possible
It's
to
not
do
there.
it.
Right.
So why we're being asked to do it, I have no idea.
Well, we've given up on it as an
Yeah.
option.
And so, but the other thing I would like to say is that if there is flex in the budget, I think that there are a number of other things that we need to do as a school that could require some additional resources. So that bothers me too, to say, well, the little bit of flex money that we happen to have, because there is not a lot, is now all gonna go toward this block schedule, which means other things that we might have wanted to do to support the IB program or support even additional remediation or support for our students, we're not gonna be able to do that because we're being forced to take all of our discretionary money and put it into a schedule option. So there's an opportunity cost there if that's what, if that's where we have to target all of our discretionary dollars. And we already are making some choices about discretionary dollars with the way we're funding our athletic director and our MYP and our IB coordinator. I mean, right? So,
Correct.
it may be a matter of, well, yeah, if you didn't do all that stuff, you could come up with some extra teachers, but we don't want to not have those other things because we need those. We want the money that we put into our performing arts program. We want the money that we put into some of our extended learning opportunities. We don't want to take that away.
Well, I will say that in my experience throughout my career is that your voices are very powerful. So the more support, the better. If I felt that the community really didn't want it, the staff didn't really want it as a majority, then you wouldn't even push it. But again, I do hear from people that it's a great option. Had a meeting with the RAA Foundation board last night, and there was support for it. But it's just, and I know the PTSA has issued some letters supporting it. The foundation has sent in a letter supporting it. It's just a matter of somebody telling me, here's the money to make it work, and we're ready to fly. But that hasn't happened yet.
All right, so I'll draft something for everybody to review. And,
Martha, we never vote on
oh,
anything
thank
on
you.
this.
All right.
I don't think, did we?
No, we didn't. We've been discussing. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Budget process. We have Crystal on here to kind of walk us through the timeline for our budget process.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're well this morning. I have a lot of information to share with you, and I'm going to try to do it as clearly and concisely as possible. Martha is correct. There's a lot of work to do in a very small window of time. So I'm going to start with an update on budget, and I didn't have a chance to look at the agenda when it was being passed out, but if there is space in the agenda also for a spring elections update, just let me know when it's appropriate to share that.
Yeah, we've got 15 minutes for each item.
Okay.
Okay, so if you
And
want
are
to
they
just,
back to back?
that's fine.
Okay. So, for budget, everyone should have received through their Fulton County email a link to a webinar that is just under 20 minutes long, and it's a tutorial and a guidance on budget and the role of the council in budget. The council's role is to approve the budget recommendations so that they can move forward to the area superintendent and then ultimately be approved. So here are some dates. The first one was yesterday, and it's March 10th. That's the deadline for the RSVP for budget support sessions. I know Pam has registered. Thank you, Pam. I know it was short notice and the information got lost. If you have trouble accessing your Fulton County email, please let me know and we can discuss that online. I can support you in getting it back up. However, if other members still want to attend, the sessions will be at Westlake today from 6:30 to 7:30 and at Centennial High School tomorrow from 6:30 to 7:30. All of our central people are currently registered for Centennial, so I will be going to Centennial. I strongly recommend that if you're able to come, that you attend, and you guys are in good hands because Pam is already going to attend. On March 13th and 14th, there are budget support sessions for cohort 1 principals. So I'll be attending that along with Dr. Shaw as well. Those sessions will be in the south on March 13th and in the north on March 14th from 9 to 11. Yes,
So
sir.
I'm still a little unclear, and maybe this is not the point to have a discussion. So on the 13th, I'm going to the new principals budget training. Then the 14th is a different one. I just hate being on the board in 2 days.
I understand. I just had this conversation with Pammy. There's a new principal meeting on the 13th, but there's another date for budget support that we're highly recommending you go to. It's 2 hours on the 14th, and it's gonna be in PLC North. So we know you can't be in two places at the same time on the 13th, but if you can make it to the training on the 14th.
Okay. Do I need to I'm sorry, I kind of got all personal.
That's
Do I need to
okay.
register through PD 360 to
If
do
you're,
that?
if you're not there, I'll make sure you're in there. Just,
Thanks,
hit me-
Crystal.
hit me with
All
the-
right, appreciate you.
Thank you. So March 20th, by March 20th, the council budget committee needs to meet with Dr. Shaw and talk about the budget. By the 21st, Dr. Shaw will be emailing the council his recommendations that he has discussed already with the budget committee. And then there's a very short window from the 24th. Just gonna double check my calendar because every day counts. From the 24th to April 4th. That's from a Monday to a Friday. During those dates, the council needs to meet and approve the budget. So when you're setting, if you already have, I think Riverwood is my only council that actually does have a scheduled meeting. Within that window on the 1st, please, that's what I have on my calendar. So most councils don't even have a meeting at that small time, so that's a good thing. Just make sure that that gives you all enough time
We
to do
planned
it.
it that way.
Forward thing.
So by April 3rd, the council should approve the budget, and there's a certificate that gets signed by your chair to memorialize the council's approval of the budget recommendations. And they get sent forward by April 4th. Any questions about that type timeline?
Why is it so tight?
That's a good question. This is something we did in collaboration with budget, so it wasn't something we had very much say in. Sometimes, like with stuff with RFF and strategic plan, we can use the feedback we get from schools and principals to tease out the timelines a little bit. This was very different, particularly because there's a new system, Prime, that principals are also being trained on. So it wasn't something we had loud wiggle room on, but we do acknowledge that it's a tight timeline.
Well, I mean, my comment is, I've been governance boarding for a long time, and no one ever complains that we have too much time. Everybody always complains we don't
There's
have
not
enough
enough.
time, so.
Point taken. Anything else that's not clear? If anyone wants to register for Centennial, I'll be there right along with you, and if you haven't seen the webinar, I've watched it a couple of times. I'm gonna move on to spring elections. There's
So let's just stop right here and make sure everybody's clear before we go on.
I'm sorry, Martha, there must be like a fan or
So
something.
come up here. Let's see the people.
That's
That would be
nerd.
better anyway.
Crystal, this is a little synopsis I did
Thank you.
of the webinar.
I appreciate that.
I just want to give people a chance to ask any questions on this topic if they have them. And also Pam has done us all the favor of doing a little quick summary of the webinar content, which does not give you permission not to view it, but if you want a little help, I watched it the other night. It's pretty painless. But any questions about this?
So we do the webinar and we need to attend Centennial?
The session is optional, but you'll have the budget team there, Gail will be there to answer questions, and I just highly recommend it.
Well, and Pam, can you remind us who is on the budget committee with you?
Well, Dr. Kopkus is on the budget committee. I still need one more governance council person. Did either one of you guys, nobody responded, so.
Oh, to that,
Joey, can we talk into doing it? It's gonna be short and quick and
We'll do it
painless because we
together.
don't have a lot of time, so.
Together.
Y'all wanna do it together? Okay, all right, we'll have 4. All right, but the governance council will be represented by 2 student representatives, a faculty representative, and myself. I'm the chair of the committee. We also have PTSA, Foundation, Papa and Bob, and RAA represented. And I don't know, but I think that's the first where in the budget process, all of the fundraising organizations that contribute to the school are part of the planning process. So the hope is, as we are looking at the whole bucket of money, it's helpful to Dr. Shaw to know what we can do where. As most of y'all have heard, the foundation's focus is really pursuing grants, which aren't guaranteed. But there could be quite a few things in the budget that could be funded by a grant. Now, it's not an ongoing thing, so you can't count on it necessarily. But there could be more creative ways to fund. Now, that's not to say that we still don't need the funding from the district for the personnel positions. But the goal is to have the committee represent all of the interests at the school and figure out where all the funding's coming from.
You mentioned grants. Who's writing those for?
Lynn Fountain is the Riverwood Foundation grant writer. And she was pretty successful doing that for Ridgeview. And then, you know, I do a lot of that in my profession, so I guide a little bit on that too. So, but the synopsis was really meant to, you know, because I've been confused in the past budgeting where everything comes from and what buckets and what funds what and what's optional versus what's required. So this was just a little synopsis of the majority of the funding does come from the general fund, and it is set based on an enrollment count. If I'm stating anything incorrect here, let me know. And I think what everybody needs to understand, that does include allocations for all the teachers, the staff, the tag, the special ed, the world language. IB is extra for us because we get extra funding in there. I think that's an understood equation. 82% of the budget goes to personnel. There are supplements, is what they call them, that are unique to the school, which I'm understanding are, those buckets are determined in the spring, later in the spring, or are you
They're
talking about-
assigned, they don't even get their first check until the September paycheck, so we assign them over the summer. A lot of it is coaching, clubs, newspaper, things like that.
Okay. And then there is a flex position, but as you know, you see the choices they've got where to spend it, counselor or media specialist, like, you know, in the library, or admin or general ed. So you can see where we start pulling from one, and this was Martha's point. You take money away from a counselor to put in an AV block, now you don't have your counselor position. So it is very difficult. The non-personnel, if I've got this correct, it's allocated, the current year was allocated based on $135 a student, if I heard that right, but that covers pretty much everything else. Is that correct? And as Crystal said, our role is to advise, review, and approve the general fund budget. The rest of it is stuff that is funded by different people. The district funds the textbooks, Title I, which we get none of. That's part of a challenge because we have a community that needs those kind of services, but we get no funding for that. The seed funds, as Dr. Shaw told you, and we applied for 10,000 because I did the math and it was closer to 48. Was that the total, 10?
I thought we got 10.
Just over 10.
Just
Okay,
over 10.
all right. We can apply every year, as he's indicated, but we will be in a pool of more people applying. And then the student activity funds, which you can't count on because you don't know how much that's going to be, but those are there. And then I put the 4 buckets at the bottom because those are other people raising funds for the school. So that's just a snapshot for everybody's review. And I will be attending the training session Wednesday night. So.
This is awesome. This is the first time someone from budget has done something like this.
So, just to kind of summarize, so it's really important that Pam, as a member of the budget committee, go to that training. For others of us, if we want to go, it's fine, but she's sort of our emissary to manage the budget process. And I want to thank you for taking that on, in addition to serving as our secretary and as serving as the chair of the foundation. So Pam's wearing many hats on behalf of the school. And thanks to Joey and Jenna and Jeremy, Joey, Jenna, and Jeremy for being on the budget committee, because I think it'll be important to have the faculty and student voices in that process. And it's also not required that we include these other entities, so I thank Pam for reaching out to those groups and making sure that we're looking holistically at what the school needs as opposed to one group at a time. So as far as we are concerned, I know you're on a tight timeline, but it might.
Please call extension 120.
I don't know that we'll have a lot else on our agenda on April 1st. That's a 4 o'clock meeting. But whatever you could get the group in advance might be helpful. I mean, if there's some sort of just summary of recommendations or something, so that we could process a little bit before we actually, that may not work with the timeline. Are there any other questions for either Pam or Crystal about the budget process?
Well, I mean, a general question is, since the driving force is enrollment, Do we have any new projections, Dr. Shaw, of what our enrollment is going to be and how many out of attended zone students have actually applied and been accepted?
We do. Our projected enrollment was 1605, and Mr. Blackwell, how many magnet kids did we finally settle on? What was the number?
They allowed us 23.
Plus, we anticipate about 20 people from employee transfers. So we're about the same. We're going to be about 1640. That's
I just
projected right
wanted,
now.
so we had 23 eligible applicants for the magnet program, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Great. So our number was,
That's your question.
51.
Yeah.
yeah. so
How many of those were
we're
for
well-
Ridge?
What was the question?
We had 3 eligible, I think this is a better way to answer your question. We had 3 eligible applicants in process B, which was the one designed to sort of reach outside of those kids who were already at Ridgeview or who might be at another Fulton County middle school.
And so we had 20 then from either Ridgeview or
In attendance
Or
zone.
the, or siblings, so 20 from siblings in Ridgeview,
I think that's right, yeah.
and then 3. So maybe at the April meeting, can we get sort of an official numbers breakdown by category of that?
Mhm.
Sure.
So I did see on the school board agenda that, Bruce, I did see on the school board agenda that they're presenting the school projections tonight, Thursday. So we should be able to kind of see that number, but you feel like we're gonna be about the same
I
as we
do.
are this year?
I do.
Right, any other questions?
Just about the budget, when you take out all the things that have to be paid for, the teachers, how much money are we even influencing or voting on?
You know, Bruce, I'm a little bit at a disadvantage because I wasn't part of this process last year. So all I've really learned is kind of on the fly and looking at what was kind of decided. So I really can't answer honestly. I mean, we'll know, shoot, after today when I get in the computer and see what's there and what we're allocated and spaces, and I have to match what we have versus what the computer thinks we should have. So I really can't give you an articulate answer. I just don't know.
But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a pretty small percentage of the
Yeah, I mean,
overall
yeah,
budget.
it's
Do you
not
have
like-
any movement on?
Like to Martha's point, it's not, there's not $1 million sitting in there that we're stashing away. You know?
And what there is, we're already using for things. So to us, it doesn't look like it's available money because it's funding Roxy Garber or it's funding half of Dr. Kopkis's position, so. Okay, so the next item then, Crystal, is the process for election appointment of governance council members for next year.
Sure, so, as you all know, June 30th, for all members of the council that were one-year terms, which in the inaugural year of the council, there are staggered terms, some are 1 year, some are 2 year. So one-year terms end, that means that there'll be elections in the spring. So on March 20th, Dr. Shaw will receive a toolkit from us that we've really been creating since cohort 2 and now cohort 1 principals have access to.
What was the date, I'm sorry?
March 20th at the principals meeting. What the toolkit is basically everything that you need to have an election. There will be a guidance that we're just putting the finishing touches on. The details can be very complicated in terms of who can run, who can vote. And just to give you a very high-level overview, there'll be parents of rising eighth graders that might be able to run for council seats and vote. So in order to make that clear, we've put together a guidance for candidates that wish to run for parent seat and candidates that wish to run for staff positions to represent both constituencies. That will be included in the toolkit. Also flyers, the scripts for messengers that will go home, scripts for email blasts, everything that you need to run a successful election. The period to declare your candidacy, if you want to run for a seat or want to be reelected, is going to open at the end of this month and will be open until April 25th. Once that closes, the elections will be held May 13th to May 15th. And after that, all terms pursuant to the inaugural year are 2-year terms. So although they'll continue to be staggered and end at different times, there will be no more 1-year terms. So,
Is this written down somewhere?
yes, this is all going to be in the toolkit. We're putting the final touches on the guidance, which is why I didn't distribute it today. But we really need to make sure that legally everything on it is accurate. We don't want to misinform anyone. So sometimes we'll hold off a couple of days, whether the lawyers are trying to get back to us or whether we're giving them time to review it, to make sure we don't misinform the community. The last thing we want is to tell somebody that they can run and then have to remain on that. So that guidance is going to be in the toolkit.
So you said the election was May 13th, or will it
The
begin?
elections will be, the actual elections will be online, just like they were in cohort 1, and they'll be from May 13th to May 15th. But there'll be a period to declare your candidacy before then. And that should be opening up at the end of March, and it'll be open till April 25th, so roughly 1 month.
So one of the things that, so we are a special case of one, and we may need some guidance specific to our situation. Because we transitioned from a conversion, and we did so right before the election process, and we just had elections. The way we handled that with the district's approval was everybody added 1 year to the term to kind of get us through. But the way the conversion charter was written, almost everyone on the council has a 1-year term. And so what that means is that the only people who, if we all added a year to our term, the only people that would have yet another year to go are Donna Davis and Jeremy Kopkis. The rest of us are over with. And Donna has already stated that she's not going to be able to serve next year. And so that means we have one person who will be coming back. And so I'm sure you don't want all these positions elected for 2-year terms.
No.
So we're going to have to,
I
we may have to
noticed that
restart.
when I was helping Tiffany put together the correspondence, we were sending every principal, and I'm like, I have to touch base with Riverwood because I noticed that it was a little bit different. But now that you've provided that clarification, it makes a lot more sense because I didn't know some of the context behind it. So I'm going to talk to the team and talk to Tiffany and see how we can make it a little more seamless because it seems very jarring for everyone.
So, again, I've probably been told this 100 times, I just don't know the answer. As far as principal appointees, like portion, are those for a year, or do I have to, how does that work?
You're going to get a list from me.
Okay.
That's going to have, from Tiffany, that's going to have everyone highlighted. If you have someone that you appointed for a year, you can reappoint them. Just know that the council needs to approve your reappointments.
Okay.
Or if that person isn't able to serve, you can appoint someone else, but once again, the council would need to approve that.
Gotcha. Good.
Yeah, the way that conversion charter was written, all the positions were for 1 year, except for one of the parent elected and one of the teacher elected. All the appointed positions were for 1 year. The PTA position was for 1 year, the foundation position was for 1 year. And so that's why we're in a situation where the two that were 2 year that would have 1 year left, and then if Donna is not going to be able to serve that additional year. So what seems like it might make sense is if we just pretended that we were in cohort 1, like if we just pretended we were doing it for the first time, and that distinction you all created in the first election, that some people would have a 1 and some would have a 2 in that first election, that might actually make the most sense, so that we don't continue to have everyone rolling off, or a huge majority rolling off at the same time. But I'll let you all
would be
sort
who
that.
who will be choose to have what term, or who would want to rerun or is looking to come off. So that would be helpful information for us if we were to consider such an option, just so that we don't put individuals in a predicament that have to run again, that don't want to run again.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't I send an email to the group and ask you if you would be interested in serving for another year? Is that what you're asking us?
Yes,
Like, if there are some
it
people
doesn't
who
mean
wanna-
it'll never happen, but it would be good information to help us make it as
Can I ask you a question? Is the idea half would serve, stagger off and on, or not?
Yes, the
So then we
idea
would
with
be
cohort
looking-
one, with the initial, was that some one-year terms, some two-year terms would mean that not everybody would roll off at the same time, is what seems to be happening with the conversion right now, is that most of this council will be rolling off, and we don't want that because we want consistency and continuity amongst the councils. So I think Martha is proposing a very good option. We just need to make sure that it's okay for us to do it, and that's more of a governance and lawyers question. But the purpose behind the staggering of the terms is to make sure that at the very least, half of the council is there to see the strategic plan through, as others roll off and either get reelected or, new members come on with fresh ideas.
So does the new guidelines identify a count or a percentage of the council that are on the 1 year versus the 2 years? So that would tell us we need X
So-
amount of positions to reserve.
So with cohort one, it was about half of the terms were 1 year, half of the terms were 2 year.
So
But
50%.
because of your unique situation, it's a little different for Riverwood.
And we also have a PTA appointee and a foundation appointee that we wouldn't have anymore. Those would be elected parents or community members appointed by the.
Okay.
So what might help, I think if you could provide us with what the council structure is,
Okay.
because I think we're kind of assuming people know that, and we don't, because we're structured differently. So if you could provide us with what the charter system governance council structure is. There's 3 teachers elected by the teachers and 3 parents elected by the parents, or whatever it is. Then everybody will know that's where we need to get. What I hear you saying is that the district would think it best that since we're already a charter system governance council, that we don't go into next year with only 1 returning member.
I can't speak on behalf of the district. I
But you
would
can-
doubt
but-
that that's a good
but
idea.
Can you give us some feedback on
Yes.
that? So if
What I'm
that's the
gonna do is
case,
bring it
then
back.
we have to decide who rolls over.
Meetings are gonna be,
Short and sweet.
Short.
I am quite happy to leave it in Dr. Coffey's hands, but you can let us know about that. Okay, well, that's, because if the candidacy is April 25th, then perhaps, Crystal, if you could come back on April 1st
Absolutely.
with some of this information. I think we need to sort this out before we start telling people what the options are. Anything else on that?
That's it. The rest of the information will be coming after March 20th, the other 2.
And I thought there was a limit. You couldn't serve for 2 years.
2 terms, you're right. You're right. Because of the idea that children age out of the school, so you might have a parent that might come into the council, say, you're in middle school in 7th grade, and they're serving 2 terms. Well, if they run again, their child will no longer be in the school, so they can run for the feeder school if they are a cohort 1 school. But there are limits on terms because, and it's also to keep fresh ideas on the
Right.
council so that the same people aren't always the ones that are representing their
How
constituents.
many of us have been on longer than 2 years?
On this
On
school.
this council, longer than 2 years? So Dr. Square is the only one, because they were all 1-year terms.
Right.
So I know that Joel Kadish had been on for
5
years, for like 100, yeah, since its inception. And he chose to step off for that reason and give, another opportunity, but I think the rest of us,
This is the end of our second.
it's the end of our extended term.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I kind of feel like we need to hit the restart button. I mean, I don't know, while I appreciate the point about wanting more continuity, if we hit the reset button and we said, this council can now run for 1- and 2-year terms, like the other councils did last year, and then some people choose to run again, that might give us sort of the legacy effect. Or, like you said, we could just decide that some of us are going to serve another term in this role, and then half the positions would be open for election. This would be 2 ways to get kind of where we need to be. But it looks like Dr. Square is probably the only one that's not eligible to actually run again. item is the update on the Riverwood expansion renovation process.
Well, we kind of got a tradition where you say what you hear and I say what I hear and we'll meet in the middle.
The last I heard was I had a long conversation with Patrick about it, and he had kind of committed to, by Friday, we would be able to announce the name of the design firm, not
Did you say by, it's not certain?
by today, who was saying, by your next governance council meeting, I will make my best effort. Patrick's really good at parsing these words sometimes. That they were very close to having the design firm that was going to oversee the charrette, which is the process. He committed that the charretting process would be done by the end of the school year. He's an extremely busy person that has a ton of different projects on his plate, but he just keeps reassuring us that we're not forgotten. He's excited about this project as anything, and it's going to be the 21st century school.
Well, I got an email the other day that we are trying to coordinate schedules with myself, Karen, and Patrick for a meeting to kind of make sure that we all understand the process. I got he didn't, like you said, he's very careful with what he says, but I got the idea that they have a design firm at least in mind, if not committed. So I think we're trying to get that meeting next week for the three of us to sit down and just simply say, here's how it works, here's what it looks like, and then we go forward and include this committee and those kinds of things. So that's, I think we're shooting for March 25th, actually, to try and get that done.
And the board, I guess at the retreat or somewhere, had approved the funding for this design firm. So
Okay.
that was encouraged. The board was still on board, so to speak.
Okay.
Just a few minutes there.
All right, so another rerun we're watching here. So hopefully by April 1st we'll know something. Because if not, I don't know how we're gonna announce this and get anybody to show up.
And I
before
texted
the end of
Patrick
May.
going into this meeting hoping that he'd give us a phone, but
All right. All right, so that covers all the items on our agenda?
yeah.
Public
Any
comment.
Comment?
Great. Couple of things, the schedule y'all were talking about, I mean, I've got sophomores coming up, and I feel like that we're trying to schedule their life through seniors, so the fact we're having to sign up on schedules this Friday, way out of time, so please do send that letter forward. We definitely need it to be moved forward. As far as the governance council and terms, there's 1,600 families that are here, and besides Ms. Shaw and Mr. Hopkins, I mean, everybody else has served 2 years, and I think that the thing y'all are missing is that there are 1,600 families, and they need the opportunity to serve. There's a lot of people coming up from other governances. There's people that are in the 9th grade families that will not have had a chance to even have had an opportunity to serve. So I think that really and truly y'all need to be looking at bringing in new families that represent the entire community, and thank these amazing people who have been on this thing for 2+ years, and what a great job they have done. The other thing on elections, I'm concerned that possibly the Hispanic community may not have opportunity to participate in elections as we've had in the past, because it is by computer only, and I think somebody needs to look at that and maybe look at ballot boxes or something else that can be done to make sure the elections include everyone in the Riverwood community, because I don't know what percentage our Riverwood community even has access to Home Connect, which I believe is how the process is done. Also, I hope next year y'all will elect a parliamentarian, since all the other governances have one. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, our secretaries are parliamentarian, it's the same position. Secretary parliamentarian, and that's me. All right, you're adjourned. So thank you, everybody. We are ahead of schedule.
Come see the music.
Yeah,
Yeah.
come see the music. Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
The Caucus
Sunday.
children are in.